Hey Hugs, just a reminder before you get into the show that we have merchandise, yes, and you can find it on our Ugly Truth website. There's a little tab, you can click on it, and then you can peruse to see all of our styles. You can grab a mug or a sticker. We have hoodies and t-shirts, pretty much anything you would want to show your pride for being an Ugly Truth listener. Thank you so much for supporting us. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to The Ugly Truth. This is episode 513. Ugh. It has been weeks since I've uttered that word.
That reminded me of a dream I had last night. I don't know why I was dreaming this. I was trying to do like my highest note.
Oh, in your dream?
Yeah, and Olivia was like, "Mom, that's really high." And I was like, I don't know why that was necessary in life, but...
Yes, so we are back with both of us together. Briefly, we're not going to get into it because it's just too difficult, but ironically...
It's basically been absorbing everyone's life. So.
When they say that sisters share everything, it is no joke. I don't know what the deal is, but both Paula and I lost a father-in-law.
Yeah, I know.
Mine most recently, yours a few weeks ago. And honestly, with the upheaval and the grief and the planning and all of the difficulties, we just went, you know what, family first, we have to focus. And it's been incredibly unpleasant and sad, but producer Dub was like, are you guys going to record? Because you really need to give me something fun to do. And we're like, fuck yeah, I'll record.
Yeah. Amongst our grief and traveling and, ice storm and, children mourning and all that stuff. Yeah, we'll find something fun.
Weeping children. So,
not to mention, I have a major jaw infection, which we'll get to.
Which we're going to talk about.
What not.
What I did, but I will say, I'm not going to get into any details, but the thing is, when life events occur, it's so fascinating. I don't know if you're this way. You and I are very different when it comes to life, obviously, because we're different people. But I found out that my father-in-law had passed away. I was sitting in the parking lot at my vet. And I'm sitting there, and Daryl is getting his hair cut, which he hadn't had a haircut in like 2 months. And so I'm at the vet, and the vet comes out. And here's what's weird. Right when the vet's headed out with the dog to tell me they've done their, exam and stuff, I get a note from Daryl saying, I just found out my father died. And then the vet comes out, hello, we have Sonny.
Hi.
Just like that. And I'm like, hello. And all I remember is staring at the building going, well, this is the most bizarre situation of my life. Here I am sitting in a parking lot at the vet's office. And I just found out this incredibly cataclysmic news. That
they don't show that in the movies.
They don't.
It's always someone at home, reading a book next to a window, and then suddenly get the text, and you're like, oh.
Or,
no one's ever on the toilet or, in the shower.
More realistic.
Or, in the middle of, like, frying bacon or something. You're like, ah!
So they give me the dog. They go in to give me the thing so I can pay. And while I'm waiting, I call Daryl. And he's at the hair place trying to pay to get out of there because his mother had called him when he was there.
Well, is he, like, half shaved or what's going on? I mean,
he was almost done.
How do you finish your haircut at that point? They're just so little off the top. You're like,
I don't know. We were all in such shock because it wasn't like we didn't know. He was much older. We had just seen him a couple of days before. So I'm like, I call him and I go, babe. And he's like, I cannot speak to you. And he hangs up.
Oh.
And so I'm like, all right. So they come out and I'm like, I got to get home because he's not home yet, but I want to get home. And so the nurse comes out and she's like, oh, we're so busy. And I'm like, yeah. Let me sign.
Yeah, so am I. Bye.
So she goes, you know what? I forgot to charge you for another exam. This special eye thing that you approved. I forgot to pay. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, okay, can I do this over the phone? She's like, no, it'll just take a second. And I'm like, you have got to be fucking kidding me. I mean, this is life. This is how life works. And so finally I get out. I get home and I'm nervous. And so I'm cleaning and I'm waiting for him to walk in the door. He walks in the door and he's in shock too. So there's been no crying or anything. But anyway, it's been insane ever since. And I know just a week before you experienced a traumatic loss, your husband's father-in-law passed away suddenly. And so you've been dealing with that and they don't even live here. So it's been insane.
So, yeah, basically, actually, and his was completely out of nowhere. It was probably it was like around February 10th, I think. His father was having chest pain and by the next morning, he was in emergency surgery and he passed away during surgery.
Insane.
But his father was only, I think, 58. And
really
so,
young.
I mean, that is so young.
And it's been interesting because I've been kind of not on purpose comparing our situations because and what I really, some of the summations I came up to were this. When I was sitting in the vet, I'm like, it's oddly comforting to know that when something really eventful occurs in one's life is still going on. Like I looked around, I saw a guy going for a walk, I'm here, checking on this old damn dog. Life continues even when something significant occurs in one's life. It's so crazy, right? But it's kind of comforting to know that the world does not end when something big ends.
Eventually, I would say within a couple of days, I told the kids, I'm like, look, because they were very close to their grandfather as well. But, I think the distance actually helped them a little bit because it was really hard for them to conceptualize the fact because they only know seeing him out of state. But in the meantime, I said, I know this is tough and everything, but we got to get back to normal life. We can't really sit around here and mope. And I said, it's just not healthy. So I'm like, there's nothing we can do. Let's just get back to life. Let's get back to our routines. That's what I said. I'm like, we'll have our moments. That's for sure. That's going to happen. And there were days where they just stayed up too late because we were talking or whatever. And so they would be late to school. Or, there's a couple days they even missed school because they were preoccupied or couldn't focus or whatever. And so I was, okay with that. But, they're pretty much back on track now. And, but I mean, there's that saying, there's no right way to grieve. And there really isn't. Everybody has their own way. And
the only thing that I mean, obviously I'm grieving a little differently. He was not my father, but I mean, he was like father-like. But Daryl and I, who's obviously struggling, I told him, I said, look, at the very beginning, the first day when we both got home from our crazy place where we learned about this, we were back at the house and I said, look, I'm just going to say this now before we get out of shock. It does not matter how we do this, but we just have to get through it. Like you can't bottle it up and act like nothing's wrong. You have to just grieve, and whatever that means, do it, and like for producer Dub, it's been being manically busy as he can be. And then when he's not, he's just very quiet. And I'm like, all right, that's how he's got to do it. It's fine. And it's obviously hard to watch a loved one suffer, but it's something that you just have to, and it's so like, I don't know about you, but it's like, there is nothing I can do. And it is so frustrating because it's like, what can I do? It's like, can I fuck you? What do you want? Anything,
There's nothing.
And nothing.
And what's hard is, if you've known someone long enough, like Victor and I have known each other over 16 years now. And so when he actually called to tell me, he called and he didn't even say anything. I knew he was calling, and I just kind of heard him weeping a little bit.
Yeah,
and then I'm like, oh my gosh, and he's like, I can't. And then all he said was, I can't. I'm like, okay, and then I hung up, but I knew what happened. So our conversation was 5 seconds. Yeah, but I knew his father had passed away, and then I just knew I had to tell the kids. And honestly, I've never told anybody that someone died before.
I know.
So I was just like, oh my God. I'm like, I've never done this. I'm like, how do I tell my children that their grandfather died?
I know. I had to tell my children. I told them, and it was really weird. Anyway, so weird that you mentioned earlier that you said you had a really weird dream. I've been having the weirdest effing dreams, and I know it's because of all the tumultuous things that are going on in life. I had the most bizarre dream that I was in the forest at night in front of a huge campfire, and I was surrounded by trees, and an eagle, a huge ass eagle, bald eagle, was flying around. And I looked up and I'm like, why is that eagle? It's nighttime and it's flying around us like almost kind of like in a circle. And I was by myself. Actually, there were some people there. I want to say it was you guys because it felt female that were with me. And then the eagle landed and stood right behind me and like almost put its body against my back. It was the most realistic, bizarre dream I've ever had in a long time.
What do eagles mean?
Well, eagles are it's a very Native American symbolic, they say they're spirit animals. And so I'm like, well, that's weird. So when I was, of course, you know me, I had to look it up. And it says when an eagle is circling above you, It signifies conflicts and fights in the near future. In order to claim what is rightfully yours, this dream is also a sign of victory, so you will be successful in your attempts. I know, I don't know what that means. But it also says the lesson of the eagle is to take a look from where it sees. So like above, like outside of yourself. It says you have to have the courage to relinquish stale and comfortable habits and beliefs to soar into unknown realms and new realities. So it's like all this awareness. I know. I'm like,
because you're about as stubborn as a mule.
I know. And I'm like, well, thanks, eagle.
And then it's just telling you, you have a nice ass.
I know, right? But something about the size of the eagle means something, and that the air is a male force and the eagle is a feminine force. I don't know, Paula, whatever. Anyway, I dreamt about an eagle, and apparently I have to work on my skills of allowing the unknown to affect me, is essentially what I'm saying. So,
well, I think maybe, and this, even if it's not necessarily the person, but just death in general, like when it's close to home.
Yes.
It kind of does force you to be outside your comfort zone, because you do really have to be pliable.
Yes.
Or I guess not pliable, but like flexible, or
completely.
Probably a lot more understanding than, not a lot of people are understanding, but I mean, if you're people like us and you don't usually cut a lot of people a lot of slack, you have to be a lot more understanding than you probably would be otherwise.
This is what I think. I think it's kind of like booze, in the sense that real primal feelings are exposed for everybody. And so like your true inner, uncontrolled, natural responses to things are what is sometimes coming out first. You know what I mean? And so sometimes it's, just being really, I can only say it from my own experiences. I'm watching this person who I've known for 25 plus years be the person he was before I even knew him. Like he's reverted to these coping mechanisms that he would never ever do now, but there's a lot of avoidance. There's a lot of, just like, I just need to keep my mind busy. Like he started working the next day, which I thought was insane, but he did it because he had to. And so he's like, are you recording a show? And I'm like, I guess I can, but I really don't know. He's like, I just, I'd like to produce something funny. And I'm like, okay. And of course we didn't, but that's his go-to like primal coping, I think.
Right.
Anyway, okay, so moving on. We've talked about the dreams. We talked about death enough. Okay, so you had some dental issues. Also, in addition to dealing with a sudden loss, you also had a toothache that turned into something a lot worse than you thought it would be.
Yes. Well, okay, on top of the tooth, okay, let me get the other things aside. So Victor had left for Oklahoma. During that week, debit card to my Visa debit card, someone had stolen the number, and they started to buy all these $1 shitty games, like for app games, like. And then I thought about this. I didn't even think of it at the time because I was just so like exhausted from everything. They bought a McAfee virus software.
What?
And I'm like, is that sarcasm?
Are they trying to just rub it in your face?
That was the most expensive thing. It was like $70.
Asshole.
And so it really pissed me off. And I was just like, but I didn't catch that until days later. And I was just like, wait a minute. I'm like, a virus scan software? I'm like, did they just do that on purpose to like send a message?
They're just like, look what we did.
So that happened. And then our coffee pot broke, which I know is not a big deal.
Yes, it is.
To me, it's huge because I came in the kitchen and
I would have started crying.
There was liquid on the counter. Like the grout was kind of brown. I'm like, what is that? And then it's kind of like ants. Like you see a couple, and then all of a sudden you broaden your horizon, and then they're everywhere. You're like, oh my God. There was coffee all over the counter. The little dripper. We have one of those on-demand things where you press against it and the coffee comes out.
Yeah.
It was leaking everywhere. And so everything that had been in the top craft part leaked all over the counter. So, I mean, we had like 4 cups of coffee all over the counter. It leaked all over the floor, everywhere.
I would have been so mad.
Oh, God, Jamie, it was the tip of the iceberg. So that was all going on. And then over the weekend, I had a filling in one of my molars that had fallen out. It had fallen out a couple months ago, but I didn't have the best dental insurance at the time. So I was just like, I'll take care of it. Yeah. Well, over the weekend, I don't know what happened, but I bit into something and I obviously felt something happen. And before I knew it, I was chewing tooth. And I was like,
oh my God.
So I started spitting it out. I literally broke half of my tooth off of my molar. Ugh. And I was like, oh, well, that's fantastic. And I'm like, what is all that stuff in there? It looked like goo. And so I was like, that's gross. And so within like a couple of days, my tooth started hurting. And before I knew it, I had a golf ball in my jaw. And so I went to the dentist. I called them because it was an emergency. And I'm just yeah, I got it. So
makes my stomach hurt.
Oh, God, Jamie, it was like my whole side of my face was just like, dun, dun,
oh, my God.
It was so bad. So I went in. Well, actually, they had me send in a picture. And so, of course, my face is like, ah.
You sent me that photo. Oh. You're like, look at my mouth. And I'm like, why? I don't want to see this. I'm like, it's disgusting. I'm sorry.
I know. But I always tag you in gross ones, too. I've been tagging you in all these childbirth ones I've been seeing.
Yes, I saw the one where somebody was rubbing the baby's head while it was sticking out of her snatch. And I'm like, why?
Why are people taking all these photos recently?
I don't know, because you know what? I wouldn't want to relive it. I wouldn't want to see it. And I certainly wouldn't show it to my child.
There was like a lady squatting backwards in a pool. And the baby was coming out. And I'm like, this looks like dolphin stuff. Like, God.
So bad.
I know we're mammals, but Jesus. You know? I'm like, we're not at SeaWorld.
Can we leave some of the mystery? Can we just
your ass out of the pool?
Like, God, it was awful.
I'm surprised it wasn't covered by blue dye to like identify, the liquids and things.
It was wrong. It was very wrong.
I don't know. I'm surprised the baby didn't come go.
No kidding.
Oh, it's crying.
You had a baby dolphin.
Oh, is that the baby? Yeah, but there's something really wrong with it. Oh, is it not supposed to sound like that? No. Oh, well, I thought just because it was a water bird. No.
Gross.
Anyway, so I go into the dentist and he, does a really good exam, and then he's just like, okay, and so then he numbs me the crap up, which thank God, because I feel like God, my ear even popped. I felt like it was just, I was so tense over there. My whole face relaxed. Like, I even told him this. I'm like, I feel like when people have like an amputated arm, okay, when I get not nicotine, what am I saying? Novacaine.
You get a little weird.
It really makes me loopy, but
That's cool.
It shouldn't because it's just numbing. But I really get like goofy.
That's interesting.
And so I'm like, I feel like when you have those amputees have that moment where they stick their arm in the box, but it's got a mirror on the side. And so they've like clenched their fist and then they relax their arm and they feel like the other arm has finally like relaxed because of that phantom pain. I'm like, I feel like my face just did that. And he's like, okay. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. He's just like thinking like, I don't really know what that means, but I'm like, I just mean my whole face was just relaxed.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Anyway, so basically what he said is I needed a root canal. He couldn't fix the tooth until I got that done, but he says he could fix the tooth, get a crown and everything like that. He says, or for just being cheap and done, he could pull it. And I'm just like, well, I don't want to really do that because then I'll have to get like an implant. And I said, or can I do that? He's like, you can. He says, but they're not covered by dental insurance. You'd have to pay cash for that basically because it's cosmetic.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And I said, is that expensive? He's like, it's pricey. And so, so the next day I went to the endodontist because they got me in right away. I had a partial root canal because he says between the infection and the inflammation, he could not do the whole root canal.
Right.
So he says he was able to get the nerves out, which would hopefully help with the pain. And when they were drilling down into the nerves, he was just telling the dental assistant things to like put down in the notes and the charts. And he's like, okay, he's like, we have pus coming out of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sorry. And he's just like, what? I'm like, sorry about the hush. He's just like,
God.
He's like, oh, that's okay. He's like, we see it all the time. It's very common, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, not hurry.
Oh my God, Paula.
Well, I was so embarrassed. I'm just like,
know.
God, I'm like, pus coming out of my tooth? That's disgusting.
You know what? I apologize too. I do the same thing. The vet's like, well, he had a root exposed. I'm like, I am so sorry. He's like, why are you apologizing? I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like it's my fault.
You're just like, gosh. I'm just like, I
know it's not your fault.
I really took good care of him. I don't know why that would have happened.
I think it's like a reflection on your neglect So you
It's like
apologize.
children, or like, the fact that I had this happen to my tooth, I'm like, if there's pus coming out, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, well, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Well, not with me. I'm like, it must be gross. And he's just like, well, it's my job and it happens.
This is
and
what
like,
I do.
well, but not for me. I mean, it's just like, that just sounds foul. And
Yeah.
And like, even during the thing, I'm like, I felt like there was an odor. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is just so, I'm like, I just want to die right now.
Oh my God,
I'm like,
Paula,
I'm like,
I know.
this whole thing must have been disgusting. He probably thinks I'm like the filthiest trash on the planet.
Oh, wait
And
till,
so-
well, you and I are going to talk about a couple of dental stories, and I have one for you.
Anyway, so I have to go back in like 3 weeks. And of course, Jamie, I swear to God, the doctor walked in. He looked like fucking Doogie Howser.
Oh, he looked
He's
like a small
hi.
child?
He's like, I'm Dr. Sun. And I'm like, what grade are you in?
God.
And he left because I always expect, for some reason in my mind, I always expect, some older doctor that's been doing this for, 20 years. Well, I guess,
20's not that long.
longer. Yeah, I guess longer.
Yeah.
Well, because in my mind, when I go to the dentist, I still feel like I'm like 15 or something, or 13.
Right.
Maybe 8. I don't know.
You're
but,
not.
I'm old. And so now that everybody comes in, I'm just looking at him. I'm like, what are you, an intern? Like, are you the dentist's son?
I'd be like, hello, Dr. Hauser.
I'm like, are you just wearing a lab coat, like, for fun? Is this
Like, is it Halloween? What are you doing? Do you want some candy? I have mints.
Yeah, I'd be like, haha, go get your dad. Where are you?
It's so cute that he's letting you play at his office today. Where's your dad?
Yeah.
Luckily, you were on the road to recovery because
Yes, I am.
Jesus Christ.
Well, for now, but then, of course, like I said, the other tooth is now giving the
That's
issues,
how that
and I'm just
goes.
like, just rip the whole fucking thing out. Just give me dentures. I don't know.
Yes. Anyway, so you thought it'd be funny to find some funny, awkward, or whatever dentist stories. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm down with that. I feel like we've talked about it, or maybe I wanted to talk about it like forever ago. And so I remember some of the stories that I wanted to tell you about. So I actually have 2. I don't know how many you have, but
Well, mine are just tweets. So
you have a couple of
pretty
tweets.
small.
Okay, the first one, and I've definitely, not hard, but I've definitely done this.
Okay.
It says the dentist was saying suction to his assistant, and I heard suck. So I sucked on the finger that was in my mouth. He handled it well, and that was probably about 20 years ago, and I still want to die when I think of it. Can you imagine? I bet it's really common.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they see a lot of things. Yeah.
I can't imagine
Yeah.
sucking on my dentist finger.
Well, I mean, maybe
Not
he
that I
had the
wouldn't.
gas
I'm just
or something.
saying.
I don't know. Did he say he had been on nitrous oxide?
No, that's all it says. Just says that the dentist handled it well. And that, that's one of those things where you go like, how do I recover from this? I have to come back every like 6 to 12 months. How do I recover?
Yeah,
I don't
really?
know.
I don't know.
It's really hard.
Jeez.
So anyway, read me a tweet.
It says, my dentist was in the middle of telling me how important it is to floss when his dentures fell out and hit me in the head.
Well, then he would know. He would know.
That would be difficult. Well, actually, it's funny. When I was at the dentist, he like bumped his tray or something and an instrument fell on me. Not like, one of the big ones, the corded ones. It was just some plier or something like that. And it like fell on my leg and I didn't care, but he's just like, he was mortified. And he picked it up and he touched my shoulder. He's like, are you all right? And I'm like,
oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Like a scalpel.
No, I know, but I'm guessing for like a dentist, it was just like probably the worst thing that could ever happen. And I'm like,
it's very unprofessional, I'm sure. But you're
I'm
like,
like,
what? Whatever.
I'm like, I'm fine.
Stuff like that happens to me too. Like I told you about that one time I had to come in for like an uber early appointment. I was there at like 6:45 in the morning and I had to get a cavity filled and I was really anxious because it was so early and I just was, so they gave me like a half of a pill of something good. And so I'm in the chair and I'm just super relaxed. I'm like, oh my God, this is like the best appointment ever. And all of a sudden he's really close because he's filling the cavity and his stomach starts to growl and it was loud. It was like, like
I
that
thought you were
really
going to say
loud.
it brushed your boob or something.
And it was like, and I remember laying there, I'm like, that was right in my ear. And he goes, yeah, sorry, I guess the banana wasn't enough breakfast. It was so
well,
funny.
that's not good enough for anyone.
Oh God, that made me laugh so hard.
I'd be like, that's just potassium. You need a lot more than that.
One would think. But
Well,
anyway.
you know me. Of course, I'd be like, potassium. Gosh, I wonder if they have a class on translation. Like, they just play
know.
videos of people talking and you have to like, we're going to give you 10 scenarios of people talking. Please write down what you hear.
Dental dam language 101. Okay, here's my last one. This is so gross, but I wanted a dentist perspective too.
Oh, okay.
At the beginning of a root canal treatment, I started to clean out the root. Amongst the plaque and tartar, I found some sort of seed lodged in the gums, and there looked to be a tiny plant growing out of it.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
After asking the patient a few questions, I realized it was a tomato seed sprouting.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No.
How does that happen?
Well, I mean, I also saw some stories where a little boy came in for his first dentist appointment, opened his mouth, and there were maggots in his gums because nobody had cared for his teeth in so long. I also read another one where they were doing a root canal on a man and they saw a bug in his mouth and they're like, what? And they looked down, his beard was full of bugs.
Okay, but these must be in other countries because I've seen that before, but it's not usually in the United States.
I don't know. It didn't say. It didn't say if it was a different country or not. I'm just saying, shit happens. Can you imagine having someone go, there's a tomato plant growing in your mouth? I would lose my mind. I'd be like, you know what? I think I need to call it a day for life. I think that's it. I think I've clearly made some wrong decisions and I need assistance. I mean, that's awful.
I can't imagine looking at that and I'd be like, do you want to say this and transplant that into your yard?
You want us to put this in a planter for you? Would you like it?
Yeah, but it's already off to a great start. I didn't realize, maybe I can give you the shavings for,
nauseating
fertilizer or, mulch.
Yes.
I don't know.
How does that even happen?
What would you name this one? Molar?
I have to go to the dentist next week. I am absolutely going to ask him about it. I'm going to ask. I'm like, is it even feasible? And he can be like, what? I can't wait. I'll tell you what he says. I'm dying to know.
Well, I'm glad you're dying to know. I don't think I could ever ask that.
Oh, yeah. We have all kinds of weird conversations. I can't wait.
Well, yeah, but you're like in good with your dentist.
True.
Things started out well with mine and then I blew it. So,
I can't wait to hear your awkward moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me one more dental tweet and then we're going to talk about polygamy.
Oh, okay. My dentist uses flavored latex gloves, and when he puts his hands in my mouth, he asks me to guess the taste.
No. That's crazy.
Well, actually, it's funny because
I wouldn't do it. I'd be like, that's inappropriate. I don't know. I'd probably guess. Well, because think about what you have to do. Well, for me, I'd be like, I'm like, well, banana?
So, right. So, I don't know.
I'd have to mouth his mouth. I mean, let me suck on your finger. I'll find out.
Know. Butthole? I don't know. Did you wash your hands?
No, I really don't like it.
The dentist that I went to for the root canal, their Novacaine had a flavor. And so when I was done, I was just like, oh, this has taste. I'm like, it almost tastes like... And I wanted to keep saying nuts, but I'm like, I can't say nuts because
that's not what you taste.
It literally tasted like
peanut butter.
Like just mixed nuts. And so
like cocktail nuts.
I was struggling for the word, but I don't know if the dentist could tell I didn't have the word, or I was struggling to come up with a different word than nuts. And so he's like chestnuts roasting on an open fire. I'm like, exactly. So as soon as he said that, I was like, yes, thank you.
Thank God.
I think he knew I wanted to say nuts, but I didn't know how to say nuts without saying nuts.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah. She's like, it's pina colada. I'm like, that's it.
That does not taste like pina colada.
Well, I mean, still though, I was just funny. Like, I've never had that before.
Interesting. Oh God, that's funny. Okay, so I really had to think about this, and I don't know if you think, I don't think you think as deeply about it as I do, but I don't understand. I think I've tried to understand my obsession with polygamy because I can't wrap my mind around it. I don't give a crap that it's a religious thing. It still is such a foreign concept to share a spouse with others, like legitimately. Because it's just something I could never do. And so I think that's why, and this has been an obsession, and I wouldn't call it's just such a deep interest for a very long time with me. And I don't know why. And it's just one of those weird things. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know there are other people who are like, I don't understand. They're so miserable. But with that being said, the Browns are back. Sister Wives season 15 is back.
Wow.
They came out, their season started February 14th on Valentine's Day. And there's been 2 episodes since. And this obviously was filmed, I would say, a good 6 to 8 months before the pandemic hit. And so there's no issues yet with that part of it. I think from what I understand, based on what I've seen, is that the second half of the season, it is pandemic.
Okay.
Because I've seen some of the filming and they're just like, well, I think Dad's just not going to come over anymore. And I'm like, oh my God. So obviously the pandemic's going to hit them in a different way. But anyway, so there's been 2 episodes. Have you seen either episode yet?
I've watched both, yeah.
Okay, cool. So have you, what are your thoughts so far? I mean, a lot of it feels the same, but I'm noticing some changes.
Well, I mean, obviously Christine is just way over this, which is kind of surprising to me because from the gate, she was the most polygamous out of all of them. Like in the very beginning of the show, because she was raised polygamous.
Her grandfather was the leader of their church.
Yeah. So I'm kind of surprised at how, well, I am, but I'm not. I'm just a little surprised at how independent she is. I still can't figure out what the F Mary is doing. I don't know her angle. I don't know her story. I just feel like there's something missing there, and I'm not really sure what it is.
Yeah.
Janelle hasn't changed a ton, and I still feel like we discussed last time, I really do feel like Cody is just staying with Robin. So I'm not really sure. This is my whole theory, because someone I was talking to the other day, they're just like, I just don't know why they're still doing this. And I said, I really think everything fell apart when they stopped attaching the religion to the relationship.
Yes.
Because if they're not doing it for religious reasons, then I don't know why they're doing it. It doesn't make any sense, because I don't think they're being religious at all right now.
Well, right.
When they were in Utah and they belonged to a church and all of that, it made sense. And when they moved to Las Vegas and they were doing their own church, then it kind of made sense still. But then when they stopped affiliating with any kind of, or subscribing to any kind of belief, because I think Cody was having issues or something like that, and now they're just living on their own, living this life, it doesn't make any sense.
For them, it doesn't.
Well, then it's just like, so then why are we doing this if we don't even believe what we're doing?
Yeah, on those notes, I agree completely. One of the things I think the struggle is, and I don't know if they know this or if it's just too deep and they don't want to, delve, although he has made some comments about saying, well, why are you with me? And the thing is with Cody specifically, and I could be completely wrong, but I mean, like I said, I've done so much reading on the Mormon faith, or they don't call it that anymore, but the LDS faith, fundamentalists and whatnot. And a lot of it came from the show Big Love, obviously. That's where my fascination with it began. And I think that's why these shows even exist now, because of that, the success of that fictional show. But none of them want to take any accountability. None of them.
And the other thing I resent too is that, they just talk about walking away. And part of me wonders, if there was a whole legal process and everything associated with it, I wonder how many people would actually either become polygamous or would actually leave polygamy. Like if it was like a legit marriage, how serious would people be about it? Because she could actually just up and leave, and there would be no recourse for it.
It's such an unhealthy thing. I don't know about you, but I had friends who were a couple, and when they were first married, like their first 10 years, whenever they would have a fight about anything, somebody threatened to get divorced. And I found that it's like that is such a betrayal to the relationship, because it's like basically now you never know if they're truly going to follow through with it, or if they're just trying to hurt you, make you feel insecure about your relationship. And these people do that all the time.
Yeah, but the thing is they don't actually have to get a divorce.
Yeah, but they feel spiritually married, and to them that's very important.
But there's nothing that they have to do. They just pack up and leave. You know what I'm saying?
I'm aware of what you're saying, but to them they are legitimately married. And although it may not be as hard as getting an attorney, but let's not forget, Dude would owe him child support. If they had a property together, any of that stuff, you can't walk away from that. So they're tangled in other ways, but I definitely understand what you're saying, which is probably why Mary's like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to live my life. It's one less thing I have to think about.
And I think that's just the thing, though, is I think a lot of them own their stuff outright. Like, I'm pretty sure Christine owns her house on her own.
Cody was on her deed, and he sold her. She bought him out for $10 in August.
Yeah.
So now she owes it free and clear without him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know. I still watch. I do
too.
Definitely, I've noticed they are definitely ramping up their snarky for the cameras. Like, I mean, when they're headed to Utah to see this family, and Christine knows that he absolutely does not want to take 2 cars, because my guess is he just wants to show, like, look, Dargers, we're just as united as you. He can't fathom the idea of them pulling up in 2 cars because they can't even be in the car together, even though that's the truth.
You know what, though? Go ahead.
And Christine's like, I think we should just take 2 cars. Now, I don't know if the camera was supposed to catch it, but she gave Mary a look and she started to, like, laugh. And Mary kind of snickered, and Cody's like, we are not taking 2 cars. Like, he got really angry, and she's like, hee hee hee. Like, she's like pushing his buttons as much as she can.
So, I will say this, though, like, as much as they do not want to live in one house, that other family that lives in one house, they seemed pretty all right. And a lot of the other couples that they've talked to, they all live in one house. And then they all lived in one house in Utah, and they were a lot happier. And so this house that Cody drew, I thought it looked pretty cool, actually.
It's beautiful.
That they literally all had like an apartment style house. They had their own entrances and exits to their garages. There was the grand room, but like nobody's bedroom wall. They were all in their own corners of the house, so no one's bedrooms was close to anybody else's bedrooms. Like everything was so like I didn't see the problem, to be honest.
Well, it's not how pretty the house is. It's the people that live there. And according to Christine and Mary, it was hell. And they didn't like it, and they were glad that they all had their own places. But basically you can't have it both ways. Now, Christine, apparently, she was accustomed to all the wives living in separate homes. Like, she did not grow up in one big house. So she's like, I hate it, and she's like, I think we just have our own place. And, she's really changed so dramatically. Like, she's like, I'm just going to move to St. George. And I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong, but not even 3 years ago, Christine was having an anxiety attack about even driving through Utah. She's like, I will never go back. And now she's like, I'm moving to Utah. And I'm like, well, which is it, bitch? Which is it?
Well, and she loved Las Vegas. She didn't want to leave there either.
She didn't want to leave Vegas either. So I'm like, what is it that you hate?
And they all hated the idea of leaving Utah. They liked their one house in Utah.
Well, it was what they wanted. Yeah. So anyway, it's been interesting to watch these people, suffer through, obviously a lack of faith or a question of faith, which seems to be the thing this season. Is like, why are we doing this? Are we doing this because we have to, because God told us to? Or are we doing this because we love each other? Like, is it both? Is it nothing? So it'll be interesting.
None of them are going anywhere. They wouldn't know what to do. What would Christine do?
I don't know. We know what's funny is that we as viewers, most of us, I'd say 90%, 95, 98% of the people that watch this show are not polygamous. So we are constantly putting our thoughts on relationships onto these people. Like, we know what we would do if we were in this situation. And it's like, but what's interesting is we literally don't know what they're going. We have no idea. None whatsoever what it would be like to feel spiritually tethered to this person and have to share this person with 3 or 4 other people. Like, it's such a foreign concept, and it's why I watch it, because I'm like, I don't get it.
For other people who have never been like that, it's weird to everybody else. So
yeah, and I don't know why polygamy is the thing for me. Why I'm just so fascinated by it. But
well, I think it's because it's something that everyone could potentially do. Like it's not a culture thing. You don't have to be a particular race or from a particular country. Right. It's just it's a sex thing. So it's just like, could I actually live with someone, have a husband, and let him have 3 other wives? And you kind of wonder, like, how would that work? Would I be able to do that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, basically, I could never be a Janelle going, yeah, this would work out for me. Like that, I couldn't. I personally couldn't. But I think watching these women struggle, and I also, God, I just don't put men on a pedestal like that. And that's the other thing. It's like, man, I don't even know how can you be so, I don't know how to explain it, but it's such a, it's giving this guy so much credit for just existing in that culture. I
think it just depends on how. Well, I mean that it can be viewed that way. I think a lot of other people get happiness from, like, for me, I don't necessarily put men on a pedestal, but I like making my person happy.
Yeah, that's not the same.
That makes me happy.
You're not sharing him with 4 other women either.
Well, and the other thing too, though, is in that regard, I don't think, I know me personally, I would view it as like a competition. Like, I'd be like, what do I have to do to fuck these other women over and make him love me the most? I know, and that's so cruel.
No, it's not, because you know what? I think that's very normal in that society. I think it's very normal that women are competing for their affections, and I find that incredibly. It'd be fun for about a minute if you're winning, but if you're not winning,
how could I not? I mean, behind those closed doors, those thigh-high like patent leather boots and like the fucking G-string and, God knows whatever else with a tiny whip and candles. You pull that, if you get, 2 nights a week, he'd be looking forward to, he'd call in sick at those other houses and be like, oh, I'm just not feeling good. I can't come over tonight.
I don't know, Paula. I just look at it and I just think, I had a dream last night because I knew we were going to talk about this today. And I had a dream that Daryl and I were going to a wedding and we were going with a polygamous couple. It was a man with 3 wives. And so obviously I dreamt about it because I knew we were going to talk about it. And so I'm running around. I look amazing. I'm in this really cool dress. And I'm like, oh, wait, I have to go and get my purse really quick. And I was switching it out to a smaller bag for like a nice event kind of thing. So I'm going through, but I have to pee really bad. And I'm like, God, I have to pee really quick. And they're waiting for me. So I'm like, oh, wait, I got to run to the bathroom. So I'm running to the toilet and I don't make it. And I peed my pants. And I'm like, well, maybe it was just a little bit and I'll just change my underwear. This is all in a dream. So I sit down to pee and I look and I've completely wet myself.
So polygamy makes you want to wet your pants?
Apparently. So I had to change and Daryl's like, what is going on? I'm like, I just wet myself. And he's like, what? And I said, I just couldn't make it to the toilet. I'll be really fast. So I change again. So now we're in a car and I asked them and I said, how do you
not make it to the toilet and wet your pants?
I don't know, Paula. Well, anyway, obviously, and I woke up and I had to pee so bad. Anyway,
so that's part of that.
Yeah. So I'm in the car. I'm like, how do you guys even do it? And one of the women, and I don't know who these people are, by the way, they're faceless. And she goes, I actually really don't mind having sister wives. It's actually really great as long as they're not fucking my husband. And I'm like, all right. I go, I don't know.
But you know they are.
Right. And I go, how do you avoid that? She's like, I don't know. She goes, I'd leave, but I love him. And then I woke up. And I'm like, that is so crazy. Maybe that's exactly what they say, though, to themselves. Who knows? I don't know.
So do you think, well, probably not now, maybe, but in like in the big love scenario.
Yeah.
Do you think he literally was having sex every night?
Well, remember there was a storyline where he was taking Viagra every day and he started having problems with his heart.
Because he was taking too much. Yeah, you can't take too much Viagra because it will cause you to have blood pressure issues and you'll start getting blurry vision and because it can cause you to have high blood pressure.
I'm not sure that he's fucking regular. I mean, well, in real life, I don't know if that's true, but I mean.
Well, I would know, the shitty 2 nights that I got, I'd be like, you're throwing down. I'm not going without. So.
For another week.
If someone else wants to not, fine. But save that shit up for me because no less than 2 times, buddy. And as they get older, too, it starts to diminish. So I'd be like, no, I'm not getting less than my 2 times.
Well, what's funny? Yeah, here, I bought you something. Just take it. It's fine.
It's candy.
You'll love it. Trust me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, blurry vision and heart racing is just because I'm hot.
Yeah, it's just no, it's just really hot in here. It's all right. Just close your eyes.
You had a cocktail. I thought that was soda. Whatever. No. Drink. Yeah, just take this.
It's true. You'd start getting
just lay down, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, you'd start getting sneaky. You'd be like, I don't know, but every time I go to Paula's house, I never feel well the next day.
Did you just put something in my drink? No, it was ice. Yeah, ice. Go ahead. Yeah, I'll put them in ice cubes.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's all good. Don't worry. You can have a good time.
What sucks about this show is that I know there's not going to be any bombshells or anything. I know it's just going to be the same old shit, but I still watch it, and I hate myself, but I still watch it. I don't care.
Well, I'll watch it as long as they keep it on. I mean,
me too.
As long as it's reality, I watch that. Okay, so I used to watch My Feet Are Killing Me. No, wait, is that what it is?
Yes.
I make up my own titles sometimes. Like, I was telling Victor a couple weeks ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was watching My Foot Hurts the other day, and he's like, you mean My Feet Are Killing Me? And I'm like, whatever. But then I thought, I'm like, oh wait, My Foot Hurts is when Clueless, where he's just like, does anybody know the answer? And she's like, yes, Elton. He's like, can I go to, he's all, my foot hurts. Can I go to the nurse? She's like, yes, take the pass.
You know, there's an English version of that show.
Clueless?
No.
Oh.
I saw a snippet of it on TikTok and I almost threw up.
You know what? I imagine that's a lot worse, but...
Paula, and she was young. She's like, well, I really hate my feet, so I just keep them in socks. And she's like, what do you mean? She goes, well, my toes are infected and I just don't like to look at them. She's like, so do you ever take the sock off? No. Like, even when you shower? She goes, no, not even when I shower. And she's like, okay, well, can I look at them? So she takes her socks off. First of all, she looks like she has vampire feet. Like, they're so scary. And I'm like, is it sock fuzz or is that like actual part of your body? Like, I couldn't tell. And the odor has to be outrageous.
Okay, so that's the thing I'm struggling with this season is Dr. Ebony, she's really started to talk about odors. And this guy, like, because...
God, a guy, like, of course.
No, it's not. It's like people, like, once there's something wrong with their feet, like, they just refuse to move them. And so they just, like, become, like, I don't know, like Lot's wife when they were leaving Sodom and Gomorrah. They turn into pillars, and they're just never... stationary. They just never move them again. And so...
Oh, my God. That's crazy.
She says, I took the sock off, and she says, you know... The toes have never, it looks like he hasn't bent them or separated them in a very long time. So she says, I just tried to separate them. And so she says, I'm taking the gauze and I'm flossing between the toes. And she says, the odor that is permeating from there, she's like, I've smelt dead bodies before, but she's like, this is about second to that. And I was like, and so I'm watching her. It's basically like a gauze ace bandage. And she's literally got like it wrapped around her thumbs and she's flossing between these guys' toes. And it kind of looks like feta cheese.
I can't. You have to stop talking. You have to stop talking. Are you really watching this?
I was watching. It's like, it was like white snow with yellow, and
oh my God, Paula.
I'm like, is that skin or what is that? It's just, I don't even know. It was kind of like, I guess, like a baby's foot when it gets really wet or and pruny.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of like two. Well,
what was wrong with it? Other than disgusting, not moving it around. What did he have? Some kind of infection? Like, what
I guess it was like a fungus that had taken over all of his toes.
That is so Why are people so gross?
But you know what's weird about this, Jamie? They all have partners. And, you know, the partner's sitting there with their hand on their legs, and he's just like, yeah, I've been like this, you know, and they always have like these weird sandals with black socks. And
I'd be like, what? I mean, I would have, if I was a doctor, I'd turn to her and be like, how are you fucking him with this? Really? How?
Well, I think it's that caretaker syndrome where, you know, it's just like they feel bad and, you know, they just want to take care of him. And I'm just like, you realize once this is gone, you'll have nothing.
Well,
you know, he's just going to be a regular old. In fact, he'll probably leave you because he's no longer going to be like gross, and he's probably going to be
sitting in one spot forever.
And you won't be laying in, you know, foot ashes every night with.
You're going to have to go back to your job at Kohl's, honey. That's all I'm saying.
He's not going to smell and.
Oh, God, Paula. Awful.
I can't talk about it anymore.
Anyways,
I've really struggled this season because. Well, and actually it was funny because I told Victor when we started watching, I'm like, why is it so bad? He's like, this was after COVID, like when they started to allow healthcare workers back. He's like, these are the backlogged cases. He's all, they've moved the priority ones up front. He's all, we're seeing the worst of the worst.
I didn't even think of that.
And I was like, oh my God. Because I mean, like this guy came in and he was just covered in warts.
No.
But it wasn't just, I mean, the feet were really bad, but he had one on his eyelid. And I'm just like, just get some clippers and snap that shit off.
Clip that shit.
I I just don't understand. I'm like, how can people walk around with that thing? I'm like, it looks like a skin tag. I mean, I know it hurts when you take those things off, but my God, I cannot walk around with that thing on my eyelid.
First of all, same theory. If you watch Dr. Pimple Popper, and they're always men that come in and they have these giant golf balls hanging off their face.
Did you see that guy that had they look like ball sacks on the back of his head? I'm
like, why? And I did see that.
She's like, so how long have you had these? He's like, like 15 years. I'm like, get that off! Like, who walks around with a scrote on the back of their head
and thinks
for 15 years? Have you seen any doctors? Yeah, they just don't know what it is. I'm like, then just find someone who does. You know, my wife is so supportive. I met her after I had these. And,
my God.
She doesn't care, what? And then it just shows the wife, she's like rubbing them or something like that. I'm like, stop!
I have no respect for women who allow that to occur on their husbands. None.
No, she did it afterwards,
I'd be like, first of all, when you, and I'm only talking about heterosexuals, maybe homosexual males, I don't know, but when you... I
don't think it matters.
When you partner with a man who doesn't know how to take care of himself... It is your duty to ensure that he does not look a fool once you've decided to be with him. It looks bad
to wax that booty.
It makes you look bad as a woman. Okay,
get rid of him.
It makes you look bad as a woman if your husband is out there looking like shit, wearing shit clothes. I see those women who let their men wear Crocs. It's embarrassing. Jamie, Stop it.
A lot of these men live in places that most people don't know exist. They're in the Kansases, the Arkansas, the
what does that have to do with anything?
Louisiana. There are places that people don't know there's people there.
Okay, first of all,
and I don't even know that there's real doctors there. There's probably like reptile doctors there. And
all I'm saying is that
I don't know what this is. I only treat reptile skin.
All I can tell you
before.
All I can tell you is this: most men, when they see something dangling off of their body,
they cut it off.
Their facts, they take a knife. And they cut that shit. I don't know what this is.
Like this one lady went in and she's like, started out as like a little blackhead, but it's just grown. And she's like, it's affected my dating life and everything. I'm like, okay, if it was a blackhead, I'm like, that thing would have been squeezed like 100 million years ago.
When I see those dilated
she's like,
pores,
I've had it for 2 years now. And I'm just like, okay, I see that thing on your face. I'm all, that's like an enormously large pimple. I'm like, don't think for a moment I wouldn't have lanced that thing myself. Victor's like, I would have gone to that medical supply store up the street and bought myself a number 10. I'm like, Victor, I would have gotten a knife from the kitchen. And I would have performed surgery in the bathroom.
Yes.
And I'm like, that thing would have been gone so long. She said it started out as a blackhead. Why didn't she nick that thing in the bud back then?
That's what I'm saying. You know what? When I see Dr. Pimple Popper and she does those dilated blackheads, I'm like, you know what? I don't know how this happened, but if I ended up having something like that, it would be a Friday night. I would get a glass of wine, I'd get an X-Acto knife and some tweezers, and I would just make it a party. It would be so fun to eliminate that from my body. I don't need a doctor.
We even have alcohol swabs because sometimes when we give Bo his shot, like if we have to, if he has like an owie or something, we have to swab the area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can be clinical about it too if I have to.
I prefer it. I prefer to be clinical. I know. I used to sanitize my tools.
I mean, we've talked about this before where, I know you don't have Daryl do this, or maybe you do. You just never admit it. But there are parts on the back of my back that I can't reach. And I have long arms, but you do lose strength the closer that your fingers get. And so if there is a pimple on my back I can't reach, I will call for assistance. Victor's the only one I'll allow.
I have never had that need. No.
You just don't know, Jamie. How often do you feel your back?
I look at every inch of my body every day.
Yeah, but you can't see it. You have to feel it.
Paula, no. I've never had something that needed to be popped. Well, if I did, I didn't know, I guess.
That's what I'm saying. But Daryl's
never said anything.
How often do you guys do a doggy? He's probably staring at a big fat zit on your back while he's
I'm going to have to ask. Well, now I'm going to have to ask.
Do you want to know, though?
Yes.
You know what? Do this. He's going to say no, but see if his face is lying.
Trust me, I know. I've known him long enough to know. And then here's
the other question to ask. Has he ever gotten a whiff of ass while he's doing it doggy style? Because sometimes, and I've heard this before, I had friends, male friends, who are obviously homosexual, that said the worst thing that's ever happened is sometimes they'll get like a whiff of ass because if someone like hasn't taken a shower or whatever, it kind of smells like butt.
Well, I can tell you what, that has never happened.
Well, that's what I thought. And so
why would you ask
my
that
first
question?
husband, and I'm just like, I started laughing. I'm like, that's gross. I'm like, that would never happen. And I looked over to him. I'm like, that's never happened. And he just kind of like looked at me and he's just like, okay, like maybe once. And I'm like, Jamie,
how dare you?
I scrubbed with a Brillo pad for the rest of our marriage because I was terrified. Like,
Paula, I am so profoundly sanitized before I have sex.
I agree. I actually had a lover tell me once that the favorite thing about me was I was so clean. And I'm just like,
that's a
now
compliment.
most women would think like that's an odd thing to say, but I'm like, thank you. I was so like,
oh no, it was
like the most romantic thing he'd ever said to me.
I have never. First of all, I have bloodhound smell. I smell everything before anyone else, and so at least in this house, I should say.
I scrubbed myself head to toe the other day because I was laying on the couch and I thought it smelled something weird. After I got back on the couch, it was a blanket. It wasn't even me.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Paula had been laying in this blanket. It smelled like that's what I thought. I'm like, I don't smell like a dog. But
yeah, no, it's the same. I have never. I mean, first of all, you're right. Daryl would never say anything, but I'm definitely going to have to ask now. But I will tell you this
do it before he does this show because you won't get a
I will.
answer.
I will say this. It's one of the reasons why I will never have sex camping. I don't want the odors. I don't want the musk of human body that has not been showered.
Okay, but if you're outdoors, then
in a tent.
It's like fresh air. There's like pine and
not in a tent. It's disgusting. If I'm gonna have sex, it's night one because I know that I just less than 2 hours ago I was in the shower.
Well, how many nights are you out there?
Well, we camped for a couple of nights this last time. I hated it. You know that.
2 nights is the max. My God, how much nature do you need?
I just and you know they always and men who love camping, they get very amorous the longer they're out there. I'm like, don't even fucking think about it. It's not happening.
There's got to be like a freezing cold lake that I can dunk in, and you know, I don't know.
It's
freeze
never
everything off, freeze something stinky off, and
ain't gonna happen. I can't. There's
I'll
just nothing.
do the white T-shirt with the no bra and be Bo Derek or something.
And let's not forget, they're not exactly fresh as a daisy either.
Well, that's normal though. That's where the doggy comes in because they're not actually touching you.
Gross. Anyway,
I'm
not
like,
doggy,
just don't
but
touch
just
me
camping.
and actually don't put that much hand on my thigh. Just like, oh God, my cat's vomiting right here.
All right, let's do our ugly and awkward moments of the week.
I will. Hold on, my cat's drooling and throwing up on my bed.
Your cat is throwing up?
Yeah, is she done?
Who are you asking, me?
No, I'm watching her. She's sitting here next to me and she's doing that.
Oh, God.
And then she did like the big open mouth and there was drool coming off her
See,
fangs.
she was sick of listening to filthy men want to fuck at camping too.
You know, why
She's like, enough!
Dogs are loud, but during this whole podcast, the life of this podcast, my cats have posed a bigger problem than the dogs ever had. Paula's sitting here under the blanket, just, laying.
Listening to your talk.
Occasionally coming up to lick my elbow just to annoy the shit out of me. But just to remind you, I'm here to annoy you. Bye. Lick. Bye. Just because he knows it bothers me. But
funny.
And then Toby, when he was here, of course, it was the litter maid. But
oh, God,
anyways.
that's so funny.
Okay,
anyway,
so
ugly and awkward moments of the week.
When I first had the tooth problem, I don't have a dentist out here. So I was like, well, how does one find a dentist? And so I was searching best dentist in Elk Grove and Yelp came up. And I'm like, well, I guess I can check Yelp. I mean, I don't know how reliable it is, but there really is there was no other way to look for dentists. And so I did look and this one particular dental office, like by leaps and bounds kept coming up. Mm-hmm. And so I checked my insurance and it was covered. So I was just like, well, I guess I'll just contact them and see. And I told them what was going on. They had me send in the picture and they're just like, well, we can get you in today at such and such time if you want to come in. I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. So I was really happy. The dental office is just gorgeous. My God.
Oh,
and,
nice.
It's like an Italian villa theme. It was like, I walked in, there's like a water feature and there's like these little balcony grill bars, like things. And it's all this faux paint and vines. I was like, wow, I'm like, I feel like I should have a glass of wine. And I don't even like wine. But so I get taken back and got all my x-rays and all that stuff. So the dentist, he told me I was going to need the root canal. He's going to refer me, but and then he numbed me up. But he says, before you go, he says, I'd really like to polish up the sharp edges, because he says, he's like, if you don't mind, and then clean out the center a little bit. I'm like, no, I would love that. I said, because I've been slicing the shit out of my tongue all week. And so he's like, okay, good. Well, like I told you earlier, Novacaine for some reason just makes me loopy.
Yes.
So I was laying there, and the dental assistant, she sprays the water and does the suction, and the dentist is doing his thing. So they were doing that, and then they took a break for something, and then she came back to start with the water and the suction, and he would put the utensils back in my mouth. Well, when the water started again, something popped, and like the instrument popped off the top.
Okay.
And it sprayed all over my face and my
oh my god,
my mouth, and then like the little thing on my chest, like the little bib.
Jesus.
And she's like, oops, sorry about that. And I was just like, geez, I'm like, I usually get a warning. Everyone just kind of stopped and stared at me, and then I was like, oops. Like,
oh my god, that's funny.
It was funny, but then it was just like, well, he's a very, very polite. I think he's like a Chinese doctor, and so probably not. Like, he's extremely professional. He's built this practice from the ground up. He's married. He's got like a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and he prides himself on,
professionalism,
excellent work. And so, I mean, to have a
this
foul
is outrageous.
mouth, to have a foul mouth white woman in there, being disgusting. It's just like, well, this is not okay, Ms. Todd. It's just,
God.
So it just kind of came out though, because I was just usually I get a warning, and I was just, and they're just kind of like staring at me. I was like, oops, sorry.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes the dark humor just doesn't seem to fly. I don't know.
That was just straight out sexual humor.
Sexual innuendo. Yeah, you're right. That's funny though. So is he allowing you to return?
I don't know.
Oh,
he just told me the referral, and then he said, once that's all done, then
make an appointment.
I think he just said, we'll figure out from there, like how to fix the tooth or something. So I'm not sure what's going to happen when I call to make the appointment. Maybe I'll be like, okay, well, Dr. Tim thinks it would be better if you would just contact this other dental office.
They're white there. You'll like them.
No, they're more inclined with it. Is that the one next to the stripper?
Oh, stop it. That's funny. Okay, mine was I don't know. I mean, you tell me. I didn't think anything of it, but they did pause when I said it. It was the vet again, and I said, they're like, well, he's going to be almost 15, and so they said, well, he really needs to see a specialist, like an animal eye ophthalmologist.
For what?
What?
For what?
For his eyes. And
okay.
Anyway, and he said, but they're really impacted, so it's like a 2-month wait and everything like that. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, here's the thing. I go, Sonny's going to be 15 in March, and let's be honest, he's not even supposed to be alive right now. And they
what is it they want to do to his eyes?
The nurse and the doctor just paused.
Oh.
And they looked at me, and I said, well, I mean, Shelty's only lived to like 13, so I mean, this is new territory for me. And they're like, well, yeah, he's alive though. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It just came out really wrong. Like, I'm like, he shouldn't even be alive right now.
I mean, like, honestly, what do they want you to do to his eyes?
Oh.
Is he in danger right now?
Well, let's take away from my awkward moment, and let me explain to you about ophthalmology. His cataracts slipped behind his eye, as I told you. Right. And they said, but his eyes, he's starting to have some kind of beginnings of glaucoma, and that is painful. And they're like, but we can treat him in certain ways, but he really needs to see a specialist. It's about 2 months. But because then I made that comment, and they go, however, if he doesn't make it to the appointment, well, we'll just continue giving him the steroids.
Well, I mean, I guess, to a vet, but I mean, they're extreme. I mean, they're going to go to like the great lengths to save an animal. I mean, I don't think.
I will say this.
Maybe it wasn't the best comment.
A couple of years ago,
it's like saying to a oncologist, so a 90-year-old that gets cancer, it'd be like, well, they've had a good life.
Yeah, I know.
And they're like, oh yeah, so we shouldn't treat them.
So I guess we'll just let you just languish.
So we'll just let them die from cancer. Yeah, I guess that would be my first choice as an oncologist.
So a couple of years ago, though, we did, when he started getting the cataracts, I did talk to them about having him being seen by somebody. And I said, the ophthalmologist situation. So I called. Ophthalmologist, he said, well, the first thing they're going to do is tell you to remove the cataracts. And I said, yeah. And he goes, and I said, yeah, I know how much it is to do that.
It was like $5,000 or something?
It was $1,500 per eye, and that was 5 years ago. Or it was like 3 or 4 years ago when he started getting them. And I said, I don't even want to know what it is now. And I said, and I'm not doing that, and I'm not putting a dog through that unless he was like a puppy. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, who's to say he's going to survive the surgery?
Exactly.
For fuck's sake?
Exactly.
I mean, and here's the thing: is it's just like, is there something just to manage the pain? Because I mean, quite honestly, it's just like, why would you give dog eye surgery? At this state, it just seems silly. You wouldn't want to why would you give a 90-year-old eye surgery? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, he does have drops for that now. So he gets drops twice a day, and he's not uncomfortable. And he wasn't really uncomfortable already. He was just a little bit irritated. So now he's fine. But anyway,
I stand with you. Those vets were being ridiculous.
I will. Well, I think what it is they are so accustomed. Like, for example, in the same conversation we were having, and the vet was great, by the way. I really liked him. He said, well, we didn't hurt your baby. And I said, okay, he's a dog. Just tell me the science, please. Like, I don't need
your baby. I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I'm like, look, I know that you deal with a lot of that. Like most people, like they're like my children, and I get it. I'm not saying that's not real, but that's not who I am. And I'm like, look, I love my animals more than anybody. I spend way too much money on making sure that they're healthy. However, he's not a baby. All right.
I'd be like, I didn't pull up in a stroller. He wasn't wearing like a pink leather jacket with a bow.
And I even said that to him. I go, look, I realize that you deal with people that think that. I said, but that's not who I am. I am fascinated about his eyes. Tell me what's going on with them. And he's like, oh, well, this was so exciting. He goes, all the doctors came in to look at him. We were so fascinated because we never see cases like this. And I'm like, awesome, cool. He goes, I know we're talking about your pet. I'm like, you're talking about an animal with an unusual eyeball. I want to hear about it.
Usually I walk in and be like, okay, how much is this? That's usually what I say. I'm like, so is he going to die? No. So then how much is this elective procedure?
Yeah. $80
That's usually
later.
What I say. Yeah.
$80 later and I have eye drops. So it's fine. It's fine. Anyway.
That's usually what I do. I'm like, I'm not really interested in the science. I just need to know, is he going to die if I don't do this? No, he won't, but he'll be uncomfortable. Okay. How do I make him uncomfortable? How much is that?
Yeah. That's pretty much what happened. So anyway. All right. Well, that is our show.
Yay.
We did it!
We made it!
We did it! So,
I don't know why. It wasn't that bad. It was good.
No, it was great. I mean, I'm glad we talked about what we talked about, and now we can move forward and talk more about raunchy feet and, what Gwyneth Paltrow's trying to sell people for the COVID, and,
She's trying to sell people with COVID?
Next week. We'll talk about it next week. Yeah, she's getting a lot of shit for it again.
I hate her, but
she's just still no. You know what? She's just ramping up her vibrator game again.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a good rest of your week. I'm glad the country has finally warmed up. So hopefully you can
really?
Get out and get some sunshine, or just warm up your home. That's nice. Yeah. Stay warm, everybody. Enjoy your week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.